From MTN News, this is Face the State.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Augusta McDonald.
And I'm Jackie Coffin.
The legislative session moves into February and legislators are moving through whirlwind bill hearings, trying to get through a historic number of bill drafts.
Inside the Capitol this week, hundreds of supporters for the Montana Constitution rallied against what they say were too many open challenges to amend the Constitution.
And joining them, former Montana Governor Mark Roscoe. Let's head to Helena to check in with MTN's Tom Buchanan.
A We the People rally took place at the Capitol on Wednesday afternoon. The event was organized by the Northern Plains Resource Council and featured such speakers as former Governor of Montana, Mark Roscoe, and former legislator Dorothy Bradley. An estimated 200 people showed up to support the rally.
Change in the Constitution is warranted once in a while, but not wholesale.
The event was co-sponsored by various organizations such as Forward Montana, ACLU Montana, and Friends of the Montana Constitution. Montana's current and second constitution was adopted in 1973. Over that time, there have been 34 amendments made to the document. Currently, there have been 56 requests for possible amendments during this legislative session alone, and one bill introduced. Those rallying felt that there are too many requests for possible amendments being brought forward and want to help maintain the current protections and rights of the Montana Constitution.
We really want the Constitution kept as it is, as a whole. We appreciate every part of the Constitution, and people of Montana don't probably even understand how many rights they have that they enjoy that are under threat with these amendments.
Freistadt says that some of her biggest concerns over the amendments deal with the judiciary and the environment. In Montana, voters ultimately have the final say on all proposed constitutional amendments, with any proposed amendment appearing on the ballot during the next general election. Reporting in Helena, Tom Buchanan, MTN News.
Thanks, Tom. A bill drawing dozens of people to testify this week codifies a version of the Indian Child Welfare Act into Montana state law. With the U.S. Supreme Court considering a challenge to ICWA on the federal level, supporters of the bill in Montana want to see the legal precedent of keeping Native American children in Native families protected by Montana law. House Bill 317, carried by Representative Jonathan Windyboy, a Democrat from Box Elder, was heard in front of the House Human Services Committee Wednesday. Language at the top of the bill reads, "In possibly no other area of concurrent tribal and state law is it more important that tribal sovereignty be respected than in areas as socially and culturally determinative as family relationships." The committee will vote on that bill at a later time. And the availability of affordable housing has been one of the major issues people in Montana have been talking about. And now the Montana legislature is starting to consider a series of proposals for tackling the issue. One bill that got a hearing Tuesday is House Bill 337, sponsored by Republican Representative Katie Zolnikov of Billings. It would restrict cities' and towns' authority to require large minimum lot sizes. That bill is drawing opposition from the Montana League of Cities and Towns. Executive Director Kelly Lynch says municipalities are willing to work on zoning changes, but they don't want a top-down mandate from the state.
Flexibility whatsoever. It just says you shall do this, the lot sizes will be this size and setbacks will be this size, no matter where you are, no matter what the issues are in your community.
Also heard Tuesday was a Democratic proposal from Senator Mary Ann Dunwell of Helena. It would offer landlords a tax credit if they rent homes below market rates.
And the Montana House has given initial approval to a package of budget and tax bills, including several tax policies endorsed by Governor Greg Gianforte. 5 of the 6 bills passed almost entirely on party lines, with Republicans in favor. The bills would use hundreds of millions of dollars from the state budget surplus to fund income tax and property tax rebates and paying off state debt. They'd also exempt more businesses from the business equipment tax, revise capital gains tax rates, and set money aside to secure matching federal highway funding. The Montana Executive Branch has proposed a big investment in the state's public safety budget for the next 2 years. MTN senior political reporter Jonathan Emberian has a closer look at what they're hoping to add and why they say it's needed.
On Wednesday, Attorney General Austin Knudsen said despite being a fiscal conservative, he's asking the Montana legislature for a significant budget increase because his department needs more resources to keep up with public safety needs.
Simply put, we cannot keep policing in Montana like it's still 1995.
Knudsen opened the Montana Department of Justice's presentation to a legislative budget subcommittee. The department is seeking an increase of more than $30 million for the next 2 years, about a 14% increase.
Our population is increasing, drug crime is increasing, violent crime is rapidly increasing in Montana, and it's time we recognize that. We simply need some more resources.
The additional funding would pay for new investigators in the Division of Criminal Investigation, focusing on human trafficking, narcotics, and other major crimes. It would also support 5 new Montana Highway Patrol troopers and a salary increase for current troopers. Knudsen said his current staff are under pressure from a growing caseload. He said meth and fentanyl are among the biggest issues.
There's absolutely no question we are seeing an astronomical increase in drug trafficking into Montana. Yeah, that's not a function of us policing better and just finding more of it.
The DOJ's proposal is only part of a broader public safety push in Governor Greg Gianforte's budget plan. Lawmakers also heard testimony this week on plans to invest about $200 million into the Montana State Prison. Knudsen's budget request also includes $5 million for an updated computer system for the motor vehicle division, which leaders say will significantly improve wait times for customers. In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
And coming up, we head to the hot seat to talk about the ins and outs of a package of bills reforming Montana Child Protective Services.
Then we talk tax reform with Senator Tester as Face the State continues.
Follow MTN's coverage of the 68th session online anytime at your local MTN website. Welcome back to Face the State.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm joined now with Representative Jennifer Carlson. She represents the folks in Churchill, Manhattan, and Three Forks. She's currently head of the Health and Human Services Committee and is bringing a couple of bills for the committee that will impact child protective services in Montana. So, Representative Carlson, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And first off, let's talk a little bit about House Bill 16. Go ahead and give us a quick description of the bill and where it stands right now in committee.
Okay, well, House Bill 16 is an interim committee bill. So the interim committee had a study to analyze the effects of a bill that was passed last session to offer in a small number of pilot programs, 5-day judicial oversight hearings when a child is removed from their family, and then also pre-hearing conference, which is a more informal process where the parent and the caseworker and the judge or not the judge, but other interested parties can sit down before the emergency protective services hearing and see if they can hash things out and see which direction the process is going to go forward. And the consensus from the participating pilot projects was it was going well. And so House Bill 16 makes that permanent and statewide.
And right now it's in appropriations, correct?
Yeah, so that bill passed the House floor. I think it had 96 votes. I'm not positive on that, 96 or 97 votes, and it is currently in appropriations because there is some money attached to the bill. The interim committee included an appropriation in the language of the bill so that OPD, Office of Public Defender, can ramp up their services and hire some more people for representation in those pre-hearing conferences. So we're just waiting for a vote in the full appropriations committee. Then it will go to the Senate. So I feel pretty good about that one. It's a broadly popular idea to give families and children better representation in the process.
Okay, and now let's transition a little bit into talking about House Bill 37, which is a measure that would require a judge's order to remove a child. So talk to me a little bit about the motivation behind this bill in terms of kind of the overall interest the agency has in keeping families together at the end of the day if they can and the child is safe.
Yeah, so House Bill 37 is a more extensive bill. It is also from the Interim Children, Family, Health, and Human Services Committee. And we worked on that bill for about 18 months in committee with stakeholders. And we heard a lot from all the interested parties. And what the point of this bill is one of the main things that people will mention about the bill is it does require a warrant to remove a child from their family unless there is risk of in harm to the child in the amount of time it would take to get a warrant. So we still want children to be protected and made safe as quickly as possible. But we know from years of statistics that in Montana, and actually this stands nationwide within 1% to 2%, is that 93% of children who are removed due to reasons of neglect. And that is a very loosely defined term. And this bill tries to tighten that up a little bit so we know when you say neglect, what that includes. 6% of children are removed due to alleged physical abuse, and 1 or fewer percent of children are removed from their families due to alleged sexual abuse. And so what we would like to see is the department moving their focus to the kids who need to be protected more and quickly. So one of the, besides requiring the warrants for the removal, it also requires active efforts before the removal. So the department has to show that they have taken steps to keep a child with their family whenever is possible. And that includes maybe referring to services, providing services, different education ideas, and interventions that we can do with families so that their child can stay with their family. Is one thing we know for sure is children do better in their families, except in the most egregious cases of physical and any sexual abuse. Children just do better. Removal is a trauma. And anytime we can avoid removal and help the family be a safe place for that child, that's the best. That's the best intervention. And that's also national best practices. So the warrant is required unless there is, if it's believed that that child will be physically or sexually abused in the amount of time it takes to get a warrant, we 100% want the child protected. That's the most important thing. But in the other cases, we do need to provide due process to families and parents. There are many court cases, circuit court cases. Our own Ninth Circuit Court has made rulings on this topic that due process must be given, and you should have a warrant to remove a person. So we didn't just come up with these ideas, it's national best practices. Another thing that this bill does is it requires children to be represented by an attorney that has their own best interests as their standard. So that is also a national best practice. And these ideas are stemming from Family First Prevention Services Act from 2018. Montana's catching up to the curve on this, but there's money available for states who are doing it right. And the money available can go to pay for the attorneys to represent children, because we have data from other states that have implemented this, that children, the outcomes of these cases are shorter and better for children who are represented. We also know that when we switch to a system where we are supporting families instead of reporting families, that's also better, because we all want the same thing. We want children to be safe in a loving home, but what we really want is them to be safe in their own loving home, because we know children involved in foster care system have worse outcomes educationally, with judicial involvement, with mental health, and we want to prevent that as much as possible.
Welcome back to Face the State. Welcome back to Face the State.
Moving now from the Montana legislature to the Capitol, where a tax bill is making waves. Why? Well, it would abolish the IRS and instead impose an up to 30% sales tax on every good from gas to groceries. The Fair Tax of 2023 Act is sponsored by some of the Republican holdouts against the nomination of Speaker Kevin McCarthy. And this is something they vowed to bring forward, but has Republicans split. Neither of Montana's congressmen are listed as co-sponsors of the bill, but since Matt Rosendale was one of the Republicans who held out against McCarthy, I reached out to ask him how he felt about it. His team has not responded at this time. From the Senate, Senator John Tester is planting his feet firmly against the proposal, and here he told me why. Listen in. So tell me a little bit about what you've been following, what you know about these proposals in the House, and where you stand in the Senate.
Well, it's pretty straightforward. 30% sales tax on everybody in Montana and everybody in the nation. And quite honestly, Montana doesn't have a sales tax, as you know, and to tack on 30% increased costs on everybody is just flat the wrong thing to do. I mean, we're already being hit by high housing prices and healthcare costs and inflation and childcare. The list is going on, and we've got the federal government that's going to cram a 30% sales tax down our throats. I don't think that's something that appeals to me at all, and I think it's a net negative for certainly Montana and the nation as a whole, because it's going to jack up prices on literally everything. And now is not the time to do it, and quite frankly, I don't think ever is the time to do this.
And we know that sales tax is typically one of the types of taxes that is most punishing to the poor, to lower income folks.
You are absolutely 100% correct, Jackie. I mean, the federal sales tax, any sales tax, is regressive by nature, and this one particularly regressive because it increases costs for everything, for working families and lower income families, and it's just bad policy.
And looking at the IRS, there's been a lot of effort to reform the IRS from both Democrats and Republicans in two different ways. You know, Democrats adding 87,000 positions to the IRS, Republicans trying to abolish it. Why do we need to reform the IRS at all from one way or another? And what's Democrats' perspective?
Well, right now they're badly understaffed, and I think they need. This is the tax season. We're upon it. We're in it, and for the IRS to be able to do their job and be able to help people file their taxes, I think you got to have the staffing to be able to do that. And furthermore, there's a ton of millionaire and billionaire folks out there that aren't paying their fair share of the taxes, and they're being let off scot-free. While working folks are paying their fair share, and I just think that's just not equitable, and so I think that we need to staff up the IRS to be able to take care of do the job that they were meant to do, and that's help pay the bills help raise the money to pay for the bills that we spend in this country. And if you don't do that, then the debt just continues to go up and up and up. So, from a public service standpoint, they need more staffing. From a standpoint of making sure that the millionaires and billionaires that aren't paying what they should be paying do, I think it's a reasonable thing to do. And quite honestly, regular Montanans are not going to see one lick of difference, only better service out of the IRS.
And talking about Montanans, I know we're talking now about local and state government tax structures, but Montanans of all political persuasions are frustrated by property taxes. It's one of the only avenues in which we collect taxes for things like new schools and new libraries and sports complexes, all of those things, but people are saying they're just too high. How are Montanans going to find, what options are there from your perspective to bring down property taxes or kind of rein them in while still providing schools and roads and libraries?
A couple things, Jackie. First of all, the first thing we don't need is a 30% sales tax tacked on top of that, because that just doesn't work. The second thing is, remember this: if the IRS does their job catching the tax cheats out there, that helps with Montana's coffers too, because if they're cheating on the federal taxes, they're cheating on the state taxes too. And then I will tell you, I'm a big believer in public education. I think it's the foundation of democracy in this country. I'm a big believer in the police forces and the fire departments we have out there providing first responder response to any crisis out there. And so I think those tax dollars are well spent for those things. And I think it's important that we keep that in mind. But in the end, if you don't get it from property taxes, you have to get it from somewhere, because these services cost money. And I would say that if you were able to make the folks who aren't paying income taxes right now to the level they're supposed to be, pay those income taxes, remove those loopholes, you'd have the dollars at the state level to be able to help support public education and our police departments and our fire departments.
So what can Congress do to get to that level?
Well, I think the fact that the Inflation Reduction Act added some staffing to the IRS is going to help, because I said earlier, they are understaffed in a big way. And I think that's the first step to move forward. And then I think Congress needs to remove some of the loopholes that are in the tax code itself that are intentionally put there to give certain groups tax breaks just because they've got a great lobbying effort back here in Washington, D.C. And I don't think that's the right way to go either. Let's remove those loopholes, make the tax code so everybody pays their fair share. And I think it will be much better if that happens. But a couple things need to happen. We need to basically staff up the IRS, and then we need to also so they can provide the public services needed. And then we need to also remove the loopholes that are in the tax code that were put there intentionally.
Montanans are still, inflation's improving, but Montanans are still feeling the pressure and the pain of $8 cartons of eggs, inflation. Yeah. What action are we looking forward to out of the next Congress, or what can be done? I know it's not as easy or a strictly American problem to be like, yes, the president can cure inflation. It doesn't work like that. But
you're right, Jackie, but there are some things we can do, and it deals with bringing jobs back to this country to shore up the supply chains. Most folks will tell you that the reasons we have the inflation we have there is around energy and supply chain shortages. If we don't have to depend upon other countries, and the CHIPS bill that we passed is a prime example, where we'll build the chips right here. We don't have to depend on South Korea or Taiwan for those chips. I think that's number one. Number two, we need to do things to help make capitalism work. If you take a look at the beef markets right now, it's highly consolidated. And if we're able to allow for more competition, it will help our people in the cow-calf business, our cattle ranchers in Montana, and it'll also help the consumer because there will be competition in the marketplace. Those are just a couple things we could do right off the top that I think would help with inflation and help move the ball down and work for consumers, and also work for us in Montana from a production agriculture standpoint. So it's a win-win deal. But, I've got some bills. We can get some people to support them. We can get them across the finish line, get them to the president's desk. So far, we haven't been able to get the amount of people we've needed to support the things like the bills to allow our meat processors in this state to be able to compete with the big guys, with the big multinational folks who control 80% of the meat in this country.
Well, anything else you'd like to touch on?
There's plenty of stuff, Jackie, and we can do this again, and we'll talk about anything you want, okay?
Join our political team on Facebook. Follow MTN Politics for the latest from the 68th session and more. Welcome back to Face the State.
Joining us now, MTN senior political reporter Jonathan Ambarian with a look at what we can expect next week.
Thanks, Augusta. Yeah, we're about a quarter of the way through the legislative session now. Usually lasts about 4 months, and we're into the second month now. And what we've seen this week and also next week to a certain extent is we're seeing a lot of bills that may be smaller individual bills, but a lot of them coming on some of the subjects that we've been talking a lot about housing rules, about zoning policy, things about judicial rules, as we've talked about, things about little changes to election policies and things like that. So it seems like right now we're in kind of the period where there's a bunch of bills coming through, and maybe hard to keep up with each individual one, but the same thing with marijuana policy, for example, where we're just seeing a lot of bills come through that may each make smaller changes, but there's a lot of them being considered.
Okay. And where are we at right now in the legislative session in terms of how bills are tracking? Things are making it, some are failing at committee, some are making it to the floor. Talk a little bit about.
Yeah, obviously, bills, they have their committee hearings. That's the first step, and committees are starting to pass them through, or in some cases reject them. And then they'll go to the floor, where the entire House or Senate, whichever chamber heard them first, will consider them. And so, for example, like this week, we saw a lot of the tax bills that had been discussed for the first couple of weeks. They came into their final form out of the House, and there were debates on the House floor. And so, yeah, we're kind of to that point now where a lot of the things that we talked about the first couple of weeks when they had their committee hearings or when they were first introduced, they're starting to get to the point of going into the full House, and we're seeing if people are on board with them there. And the important deadline always at the legislature is transmittal deadline, which is the 45th day of the legislative session. So probably be the end of this month or early in March, where all the bills that don't have money attached to them have to pass their first House and get into the second chamber in order to keep going forward. And so we're going to see just a big volume of bills the next couple of weeks as we start approaching the transmittal time.
And one last question, as we are kind of through those first initial weeks of the session, what issues have really risen to the top for both parties in terms of what are the big priorities?
Well, certainly, I mean, as everyone has, there's been a lot of focus on the budget early on, a lot of focus on these tax policies that the Republican majority put a big emphasis on getting those passed as soon as possible. And then, yeah, certainly we've seen huge numbers of bills with the red tape initiative that the governor's office has been strongly behind. And then some of the things that you'd expect to see a lot of, as I say, a lot dealing with housing and things like that. I did also want to mention, I failed to mention earlier, but at the end of next week, the State Redistricting Commission is also going to be meeting, and they're going to consider this week, the legislature put through their recommendations or their suggestions to the Redistricting Commission about what changes they want to see made to the tentative legislative election district map that the commission drew. That especially Republicans had a lot of issues with how the maps were drawn in urban areas, which they said were sort of drowning out the Republican voices and giving more prominence to urban voters and Democrats. And so we'll see. They're going to, on Friday and Saturday of next week, have a meeting to talk about that and whether they want to consider making any changes. So we're getting close to the end probably of the redistricting process, which has been sort of in the background for almost 2 years now. So.
All right. Again, MTN senior political reporter Jonathan Ambarian, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Augusta. Appreciate it.